Hello, Rasputin. How you doing?
That was awful.
How did you get more respect?
Like, I was just like an astonishing waste of, and nothing against you guys. I mean, actually, no. You know what? The opposite against you guys. That was, what the fuck was any of that? There was no discussion happening in anything that was going on. There was no conversation. It was a weird chase down odd lanes that didn't have to do with the thing before it, gesturing at some odd vibes and never actually dealing with the critique of the question at heart. Sunday, at one point you said this fucking great thing. I can share my screen, by the way. I recorded video.
Okay.
We're just gonna take a second because it's fascinating. I don't know if this is gonna go on screen. I can't tell what you're sharing, Sunday.
Oh, that's a lovely frame.
Isn't it? Okay. You know what you're agreeing with? Can you hear it?
I'm agreeing with the argument of a Nick Fuentes or Keith Woods as to the underlying fascising psychology of whatever.
Can you guys hear something? Am I supposed to click this button?
You should be watching my stream, yeah. It'll help.
Oh. How the fuck are you guys talking? What are you talking about?
You all want fascism, or you're all like fascists or nationalists or whatever. And if you were honest or smart, I
don't agree with
and
that.
I agree with that in this particular. I
don't agree
in this
with
particular sense. Children are astonishingly cruel.
This is incorrect.
They will pick the wings off insects.
This is incorrect.
They will crush snakes with rocks. I don't know. Maybe I've had a. Maybe you've.
Oh, there are children who are cruel. There are people who are cruel. People can be cruel. To say that children can be cruel, you're now applying the same thing and having the conversation as Connor was, pushing the idea that at our base level, and by the way, we'll get to the line in a second that I know this is what you're saying, at the base level, we need civilization. And we need to be civilized in order to deal with each other socially. Because children, until they really get that socialization, are monsters. There's a common thing people say, wholly the opposite of everything we've ever studied or understand about human development, pretty much in everything that's ever been done. But pop culture loves this stuff. It's one of those things we love because it sounds good in a movie. It's like when I was a child, or serial killers do these. Yeah, serial killers pluck the wings off of flies. The kids don't do that unless they're taught how to be a person in that way. 6-year-olds aren't naturally monsters. That's not how it works. People aren't naturally anything. And
I agree with that. But what I'm talking about right now, when I'm responding to Connor here, is I'm not talking about human beings in a state of nature. What I'm talking about is human beings that Nick Fuentes or Keith Woods would meet on the street, or who.
I'm saying the same thing. They're the same thing.
But these aren't people who haven't been like socialized into particular behaviors, right?
Literally, everyone has been socialized in particular behaviors.
Yeah. What I mean though is like these are children under present conditions. They are socialized by people in modern society. They're
yes.
social.
This would be my point. All children are socialized.
Yeah.
They're taught to be that.
Yeah.
Saying children are cruel is not accurate.
I agree.
People are cruel is not accurate.
I agree, but at that point we weren't talking about bonobos, so I was kind of trying to meet him at his level. I was using that as like a way. I was using it as like an entry point for something else.
Sunday, your camera's broken. On mine.
Sunday, do you know what sentence may have set me off?
Complex.
The complex that people need to develop in order to learn how to care about other people. Maybe.
Yeah.
You think? Yeah. Like maybe a little bit of a weird statement there, buddy.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. Because the idea that we need to be civilized, and it was what he was talking about, it's savages. Oh, and I think you even at some point make the comment that
is so loud, Brooks. Hang on, sorry, continue.
Oh, I'm supposed to watch this thing again.
And to care about another person's like thoughts, feelings, ambitions.
No. This is the problem. The people who have crushes and the people who've learned to care about someone else's feelings, that's the same thing. It is identical. the idea that the person who's just got a crush hasn't been properly Oedipalized or made healthy is the core tenet of psychoanalytic thinking. And it's also the core thing I super disagree with. The idea that there's a healthy social way to be, instead of understanding that all people are produced due to their material conditions, by the way, and that includes both. They're both produced. They're both civilized. They're both civilized. Prioritizing one over the other because you prefer this one over the other doesn't change the fact that they're both created by the material conditions that they exist in. And and going and saying, well, one is more moral than the other because they're civilized puts weight on the idea of civilization as being good. Good thing. And the good kind of fascism.
I agree, but I'm trying to argue with counterpoints. And in the conversation with counterpoints, if I lead with, fair enough, but if I lead with the parody of these two things and I get shut down at an earlier stage, and I want to get the discussion to that.
But you won't, because you've already given him all the ammo he needs to make the argument flat out that fascism or state is necessary, because you've acquiesced to the lies from the start. The reality is every tribe that's ever existed, all of them are modularly debt-based without centralized power. All of them, which means they don't have a real coherent system of power in the way we know it. Actually means they actually have a different type of production of their material conditions. The reality of these tribes and how their subjectivity operates versus the despotic realities of the king coming down. And then again, the most insane, stupid bullshit of saying like, oh, look, I watched Game of Thrones. That's how it was in the medieval times. Again, this is how children view things. There's like Tim Pool when he's talking about how Thanos, did you watch Thanos? He's a utilitarian, huh? And Sam Cedar looking at him going, yeah, I don't care. That's for kids. Can we get back to the point? Because the reality is, the material reality of things is that the subjectivity changes. The people living in the despot, it's not that the despot has all the power. The king may have power. Power moves. Power is modular, changes, hierarchical. The reality is we're not talking about power. We're talking about the production of subjectivity. What causes production? What claims cause of it? And how does that grow us? And so the moment you give the idea that, yes, the savages, look, they were shit. They're shit. We would be fucking our sisters and mothers if it weren't for good old nuclear families and the way that we are now. Thank God for the state. The moment you've said that, you've lost the fucking point.
I disagree. I disagree for this reason. I think you're thinking of the discussion as a single linear progression.
It was.
Well, necessarily at some level, but it also wasn't though, because the point of that is not, oh, well, here, let me concede this fundamental thing, and then I'll lead you up to the end and I'll just kind of loop it around afterwards. The point is you get to a point where you can conceptualize the non-essentiality of these things by way of interrogating it as a process in the first place.
But you're putting a criticism of it in place, not critiquing it. And the difference is significant. Because you are granting the base, you actually are joining that linear production. And I watched you do it. I know your method. Connor wins here. Hate to tell you. I mean, look at the chat. They may disagree with me. I'm not watching them right now.
Anyone who agrees with Brooks is banned. Sorry, continue.
It works. But if you were to watch, you gave grounds and he took it, and then you went to the next one, and he took it, and he went to the next one. And it got to the point where what you're arguing, like at the very end of this, was incoherent at like a very large level. And I think Tyler was like playing the cipher for the audience, because I think everyone in chat, when he went, look, I've zoned out for a second, I don't know what the fuck's happening. Everyone in chat went, yep. Don't get it. And you have a chat that's generally pretty bright, Sunday, in comparison to most, and follows this shit and really cares. Couldn't follow, because Connor just kept twisting that back and playing with that emotional sort of tag and not really allowing you your critique. And he kept grabbing and chasing and going and taking and going and taking. And it is always, that's, by the way, fascizing processes. That's what it is. It is about the singular point, because it comes back to that same thing every time. When we allow the definition to be conditioned by the large scale meaning that we exist within, then that common system defines the end result, and you're done. The only way to have a critique is to step outside of it and critique the overall Otherwise, you're just playing with criticism back and forth. And it's not far from that 11-year-old you were talking to earlier in debating.
Was that kid 11?
But again, it's good content. You broke 200 viewers and they were going up. Like, there's a reason I'm dropping viewers right now. People don't give a fuck what I have to say or any of this stuff. It's not nearly as entertaining.
Are you streaming right now?
No. You had 230 some viewers. Where are you at now? 187. You're down 40. It'll continue to drop. I am a killer.
Damn. Wow.
That's just the reality of it. Connor's much more interesting because you get to say shit. People emotionally fixate on it. They feel like they identify. You make people love that shit, man. They love feeling like they get a thing. They don't like being confused.
Yeah. Well, I think the trick that I'm working with is because there was that projection of the end result, the thing he's trying to justify in the argument, onto the previous thing. It becomes a problem of where do you enter, because it needs to be intelligible, but you also still need to break.
That's my point, is you let him start, and I would just ask this. At no point did you ask, one, what is power? How was he to even define power? It's an amorphous thing that you just got to enjoy his vibes-based bullshit. What is the state? You didn't really define that. We have definitions. I know we do. You and I would be able to talk about that. He didn't. Vibes-based. So it was able to be him juking as necessary, as you just really tried to bring out stuff in him that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
He doesn't have curiosity at all.
Tyler, what do you think?
What do I think? Holy shit! I can't believe someone finally asked me. I'm having a Joker moment. You know when they say you're like, you're a dog chasing a car. You don't know what you're gonna do when you get it. Now you guys ask me what I think. I've been thinking the whole time. I'm fucking blank. Oh my god. I appreciate the conversation, but it got fucking absolutely spiraled off. If I had to give you any criticism, and it's probably criticism you don't want, and whatever, I would just say be a little less cerebral. Fucking like Connor doesn't care. You know what I mean? He doesn't know what you're talking about when you go like 6 layers deep on a book. So like when you kind of went off on that tangent and trying to get like, hey, this is like a real beautiful flowery explanation. He's like, dude, I'm literally about to shit in this garden, and I'm going to point at it and say this is poop. And then I don't know why you're going to keep doing
You're trying to teach a dog how to play chess.
Yeah.
Like, teaching a dog how to play chess. And then you're like really excited when the paw hits a rook because you're hoping that means he gets it.
Yeah. I would have just kept it a little bit looser.
And it's the best intentions. I mean, I've talked with Connor. I know the pull, because that thing that is the conservative right winger who's ultimately underneath really just a fascist, and the vibes and the things he plays with and how he touches, it's really like familiar because we've all sort of had to deal with it, but it ain't it. He ain't got no much motor. He ain't got more. The idea when he said early on, Tyler, I have a question for you again. Here we go.
Yeah.
Would you call the existence you may have had in the military nomadic? Like,
yeah, you could say that.
Tribal? You could, but
I mean,
tribal in a way that is like talking about not being part of a massive megalopolis state system. Like, it was one of the earliest things he said that just blew my mind when he's like, well, like we've had to deal with when we've been in these tribes, we've been separated. It's like, no.
It's kind of hard to explain from the outside. It wouldn't be obvious, but internal, the military is broken up into extremely specific units, and the units do actually get tribal with each other to the point where we actually do have to compete, and that's an aspect of it.
But that would be like saying the Broncos are tribal against the Cowboys. Like, sure, but they're not tribal. Like it basically makes the meaning of the word tribal and the tribal systems that exist in, say, Native American cultures or indigenous cultures globally completely meaningless at that point.
Well, yeah, it's
just saying, it's a group of people that are different. It's like, it's not really what tribalism is.
I think the issue with it, I think it is, but the issue is Native American tribes don't actually use the word tribal to describe their social creations. I mean, they do now because we destroyed whatever word they have for it. But if you get back to it, the words chief, the words tribal and stuff, those are our words to kind of articulate a messy organization of, kind of wild people in my mind who are all kind of flying under the same banner, but they have not much else other than that, where it's, it was insulting, but now they've kind of reclaimed that on their own thing.
Their system is exceptionally complex.
Yes.
Like it really is. There's let's see. Godelier, I was trying to think of the author. Godelier, if you need someone to read on that, really, really great examination of how these tribal systems sort of work. But again,
Cerebral Sunday. Here.
Oh,
read
no.
Godelier.
I ain't the one talking to fucking Connor.
No. But I will say, you're both right. Your impression of the tribalism is also correct. From the external, like seeing two militaries versus... They're not tribal that way. The military, what he's maybe talking about and kind of like letting himself sort of sloppy fish away with, is that there is a very powerful sort of tribalistic internalism to the military, but it does not extend out of the military's confines.
Tribalism with a pretty big safety blanket. Because if I were to take the military of, say, I don't know, a Hamas unit versus an American unit, the tribalism that exists in those units, I would still say there's like a safety blanket in one and less on the other, because there's literally no one else supporting them and they are literally on their own. So there's kind of a lot of variations where one of my challenges, and it's the thing that happened throughout the discussion, and it's one of the things that happens at like the base of fascism, is that everyone wants to sort of take in and identify. People have been doing it in chat with animals. It's one of the same discussion. The base language of things, we like to biunivocalize. Big word. What it means is we like to crush the reality of an experience into a single thing. The reality is experiences are polyvocal. They have multiple meanings. They have multiple voices, multiple extensions. And so when we go in, for example, you go in for your first kiss. If I were to say, was your first kiss good? You go, yeah. That's not the thing. That's the quantifiable thing when I say first kiss, but the reality of the polyvocality of the experience, the moving in, the smells, the skin, the touches, the pressures, the way hairs dance against hairs, the way that eyes might glance, the nervousness, the energy, the heat, the breathing, the smells, all of those things that make that first kiss as exciting and as powerful as it is emotionally, flattened and fucked. And so when we take something like, say, animals, we say, elephants mourn their dead. We're taking a really, really complex thing. We're adding this stuff that we see. We're turning it into just the motions of the thing. Just in the same way we shouldn't say that everyone mourns their dead. There are dead people I haven't mourned. Great joke yesterday from, was it a couple days ago, from John Oliver, said, Ronald Reagan, I know I always shit on him. I never said the good things he did. So in 2004, this is true. It's a good thing he did. He died. Fucking great line. But I didn't mourn him. I didn't mourn Nixon. There's a bunch of people I don't mourn. But does that mean I don't know they're dead or experience it in a complex way? Well, I'm not kicking their corpse like an elephant does, I guess. So when we start having these conversations around what mourning is, or sadness, or tribalism, or specifically the state and fascism, we start collapsing the lived experience of people. And when we do that, we do it after the fact. It's kind of this amazing thing. Obviously, we're not doing it before the fact because we don't know what the fuck's coming. We do it after. We assign it after. And that thing that we do, we condition the rest of things, which pops right in fucking line. They always do. The nature of sort of the way symbolic orders work. We say a thing, the rest gets in line, and we agree with it. We all kind of just agree with it. But once we've done that, we've flattened. That line no longer has the complexity or the beauty of the reality of the lived experience we each have. And it's one of the great challenges when you're talking to someone who really, really wants you to go, well, tell me why the state's bad. It's like, what the fuck? Because that even in itself, why is there a state? What is the state? Let's have these convos. You can only have criticism, resentment. You can't have critique and revolution.
Yeah, Tyler.
I got a little incensed Sunday because, goddamn it, of all the fucking things you say people need to have a goddamn complex so that way they can learn to care about others and not fuck each other, not fuck their kids or eat each other like cannibals. You said it was like, what is happening? And I know you were saying it in context, but I have to slap you around a little bit about it. I mean, come on. Of all the things to say, it's literally the funniest fucking thing you could have said to piss me off. For a second, I thought you were saying it just to piss me off because it was funny.
I was thinking briefly of trying to play it off that way. I'm not going to lie.
It would have worked, maybe. But and part of this, to talk about the real experience, part of this is the weird, I felt left out. So part of this is like also being driven by that secondary other emotions. It's important to reveal such things. It's important to be vulnerable about sort of the life we lead. I actually really like talking with you guys. This is super fun for me. This is the most interesting shit because I get to challenge my ideas. I have to revive them. I have to put them
well,
in.
I would have brought you on, but Connor approached me independently, and I think he approached. I don't think I even mentioned this to Tyler yet. Did I?
No, he just tweeted to me, or he hit me up on Twitter.
He tweeted at both of us independently. So I would have been happy to have you on, but I was getting the distinct impression that
it probably wouldn't have been a good idea.
I don't
know if it would have been a good idea. I was getting the impression it was not welcome.
The last thing that conversation needed was an additional voice in it. I think if anything, it would have been more productive with either of us not there. Just because it's one of those things. Kind of the easiest way to trip people up is to have them run in a sack race and mistie the sack to the wrong leg, which is kind of like where we would have been stuck if it would have been like 1v2, so to say. Because, we're not perfectly in step with our ideas, which is fine. It's a healthy disagreement. But when you put us in a position where we both have to try to argue for something and we're not like quite on the same definitional plane and we're not quite on the same thing, which aren't full disagreements, you know what I mean? Where you can be like oppositional, but then you're just slightly out of step. It creates a situation where it's like, well, I couldn't kind of like on principle agree with him specifically here, but if I say something, it might be conferred as or misconstrued as a full disagreement where it's really just like, I
100%.
would use a slightly massaged term, which I said at the beginning.
I was bewildered. Well, the reason why I was bewildered is that Connor originally messaged me on Twitter. I don't know if he messaged you at the same time, but he messaged me on Twitter saying hey, I was interested in the conversation you had. I'd like to talk to you about it, whether or not Tyler's there. And I hadn't reached out to you yet. So I heard like an hour before I put my stream up that, hey, so Tyler just said he's talking to you and Connor. It's like, I would have been happy to invite you on. I probably would have during the conversation if it went that way. But I was like, okay, so this is now being organized apart from me, so I'm not the host anymore. My
point is not that I'm like upset about it. Again, one of the things I'm trying to do is make sure that what I'm saying isn't by univocalized. And as doing so, it's important I tell you about all the motivations I'm aware of that generally push. And so all of these things, the words I'm saying to you, it's one of the challenges of how law works and how the written word and spoken word have become intertwined, is that when I say a thing, there is a belief that there's a specific word with a particular meaning that is coming out. And that voice that is sort of part of that is sort of on high. It's not what I'm doing at all. I have no ill feelings or anything. I'm saying there's pressures. And it's important to sort of be aware when we're talking about these things, especially when we're having these discussions, because the vulnerability around emotional responses will allow us to better judge where someone else might be coming from or how they can be better coming if there's actual interest in coming to some sort of understanding or some sort of closure or critique. Otherwise, you end up in a position like kind of what happened, where it's clear there's a particular position that Connor's deeply socially invested in, that he had no desire to sort of step around and just simply didn't engage. Now, that happens to all of us. But if it's part of a discussion, if you're unaware of everything that is going on with the person or what's driving them or the things they're interested in, when it comes to the state, and Sunday, we've talked about this, I think you're not far from me. I would love to fucking get rid of the state. I would love it. Not today, because I don't want a whole bunch of great, you have your resolution, we get rid of the state. How many people with diabetes are
here's an analogy.
The joke we've made.
Here's an analogy. We're all using like rafts. We're all living on rafts made out of hay, and they're nasty. Do you want to? But we can imagine like boats made of something else. Do you want to just get rid of all the rafts right now? It's like, well, no, because we're on them.
Mm-hmm. And so it's what is the thing that then matters? Because I think the state is a big thing, But is it the government apparatus and the bureaucracy that specifically I want to get rid of? No. There's a lot else going on in the terms of like how we matter, why we matter, how we are produced, how society controls us, how our repression comes to form. That those are the discussions I find far more interesting than just the silly debate of whether or not to get rid of the state. Which
Glad you said that, Tyler.
Yeah, what up?
While I still have you, you annoyed me on the monkeys going to war bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
let's do it.
Monkeys don't go to war. They don't have a concept of war. War involves a concept of war. It involves the background concepts that make war intelligible. Whether or
Why?
not monkeys en masse kill other monkeys. What?
Why?
Well, you'll notice we have this specific term called war that we set apart from like any kind of mass fighting. We don't talk, for example, about like a barroom brawl as a war, but it can involve a similar amount of people as, like, say, a quote-unquote tribe of bonobos attacking a quote-unquote tribe of other bonobos over borders. And those borders could even be...
We specifically have the term battle as a part of war. It's actually not necessarily even part of war, just a battle is a bunch of dudes fighting each other and killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like battle can be individualized too. I think
I
get what you're saying, but
there's other words that are similar.
Shall we refer?
No, it's...
Look what I can do. Also,
chainsaw you.
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know. Let's see. That's like his entire gig.
What is that, Moby Dick?
No. It's just the.
For me, the difference between battle and war actually is kind of material, Sunday. So, for example, as far as I'm aware, I've seen studies. We've got bonobos, chimps that pack up and they go and they find a rival chimp. They invade their area to kill them. But that battle, maybe.
Can I refer?
War is an extended thing. War is.
Well, I agree with. Well, actually, that is a good point. I was saying that literally, like we can talk about like two individuals doing battle, quote unquote. But I agree with you. For example, when we talk about war, we talk about different levels. So we talk about the broader, like with state of nature, it being a state of war in Hobbes. It's actually kind of the whole point. A state of war can exist in the absence of any fighting at all. What the hell are you looking at, Tyler?
He's got a dictionary.
Let's get to it. According to Webster's New World, let's see, just war. Open armed conflict between countries or between factions within the same country. Any active hostility, contention, or struggle, conflict, the war against disease, a battle, military operations as a profession or science, of, used in, or resulting from war. Warring, to carry on war, engaged in military conflict, and basically the verb form of everything I said above.
Definitionally, they can't. I mean, even at that level, I would ask, do you think that they have war?
I would say you can articulate it from the outside as saying, like, this looks like war to me. You know what I'm saying? And I think that should be sufficient.
How does it look like war? Basically,
you can say that there is organization. If there's organization between two tribes, right? You could say, let's ignore monkeys even. You could say this for a much more simplistic organism like wasps. Two wasp hives. One of them goes and attacks the other wasp hive over territory. That's a war between wasp hives. It's not necessarily...
Hang on. Wait. Slow down. Tyler, as a kid in art class when I was like 7, I was very wasteful. I had this game I would play where I would have a little sheet of paper and two bottles of ink, and I'd pour them and I'd make them have a war with each other to see which one disappeared first. Is that a war? I'm looking at that from the outside.
I mean, you defined it as a war. I mean, it's not of the same. If you have to have an emotional connection to it, and it doesn't feel like wars that you've experienced, and then if that doesn't happen, then it's not a war. There's nothing I can say that'll convince you. But like, yeah, the little game of war, you know what I mean? Is chess emblematic of war? We're getting into these are subtleties in definition. It is not the same thing, obviously, as the War of the Roses. It's not the same thing as the War of 1812. It is just their own little war. And battles comprise wars. A war can be only one battle.
Roses aren't in tribes either, Tyler, by the way, just so you know. Continue.
It's kind of cool that we actually just start taking the roses
It
were
would be cool
tribes.
to watch roses go to war. I mean, roses do go to war then. I would say plants then go to war because they end up being tribalistic, taking away resources from other plants nearby. I see trees do this all the time. Trees, I have one in my yard we're going to have to cut down because it's actually sucking out all of the nutrients from the ground and killing everything around it. So the tree is at war with the plants, right?
Actually, by the way, just to bounce off of that a little bit, did you know that our concept of race actually comes from descendants in plants? Literally.
What does that have to do with the war thing?
Oh, because now they're plant race wars. It's getting worse.
You kind of okay. Point me, I guess. Shout out, reference earlier your conversation with Connor. I don't know.
Plants are at war then.
Yeah, I mean, you can like literally just yes.
Oh, it's a good way to describe it. This would be my question then, because I'm going
to stay out of this because I don't want to dogpile. But you
no, this is the fun part because it's like here's the thing. I've used the term before, and people use the term. It's a question to me of whether or not we're using it to describe an arrangement, the arrangement of things, the bodies, the mixture of bodies, as you might say, of things. Like this is the status of things. It's another if you're adding that extra little layer where it's, oh no, they're aware they're at war. There's a difference there that I think is the specific thing that people get tripped up on, like myself and Sunday, because that awareness that we're now assigning, or the subjectivity, or the consciousness.
I agree with that. I have a point to make on that. I think that's a very important point to make, and it doesn't necessarily defeat mine. It elucidates the one that we are actually going to find out that we all share. That because of your guys' lens that you're coming into this with, your belief system, you require culpability for war. Is that what I really think it comes down to? And you don't believe that animals can have culpability. Really, they can't articulate violence in a way that is in some way selfish or in some way amaterial, and so because of that, they can't truly go to war. They can fight, but the sort of inherent evil or amorality that must be present for a war to truly occur can't occur because they are of the natural world and not of ours. No. You need that human spark of evil to some degree.
And just so you know, none of that. Just mention like none of that is how I see things or talk about things. But I don't really believe in the natural or artificial world. I don't think the dichotomy works. I don't believe in mind-body dichotomy. So like those things.
Okay, I'm lost then. My apologies. I didn't mean to misconstrue.
It's okay. I also don't believe in culpability for war. I don't really believe in culpability as a thing.
I'm going to try to put this in English for you. Okay. Sorry, Bryce.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. It's not a matter of trying to find culpability for a war. It is that war as an activity is not simply the bare fact of some selection from this grouping of objects doing violence to some selection of this grouping of objects. It is actually something that's a lot more cognitively complex that involves the concepts themselves. When you're talking, for example, about bonobo tribes, I don't know what kind of primates, I'm just going with bonobos because like that's the name of it. We talk about bonobo tribes fighting over borders, quote unquote. You have to be very careful because when humans fight over borders, we're not doing the same thing that bonobos are doing. We're not like, oh, we have scent and visual associations with this space, therefore we are triggered to attack animals that look similar to us but smell different from us when they cross into that space. Where we don't think about it the same way like
we still use sense data to discover those things. That's the point of flags and of our own. We mark ourselves literally for our sides.
Well, this is the point though. Like the kind of marking that is taking place is at a level of abstraction that has no correlate with the bonobo. The bonobo like recognizes the enemy from the friend in the same way that we identify left from right. You can't really describe that to another organ, the way we identify color or the way a dog like identifies, like finds its way by smell. When we're talking about identifying friend and foe by reference to a flag on a border, we're literally saying this is a sign that marks out members, conscious members of this organization that has legal control or claim to this linearly defined plot of land that we understand from the sky view on a map, and we have to recognize through a kind of forensics when we're on the ground, because we only understand it via abstraction. That's a radically different kind of activity. Bonobos don't sit at home thinking about, we must secure the border, send forth a detachment. That's not what they do.
No, and it's also important to note that this is not something as trite as saying that they don't have human faculties and that we therefore are better or different or whatever. We're talking about
Koba did. Never mind. Sorry.
Modalities of existence is what we're talking about, and the modalities of existence are different. That we bring others, and it's again very much human nature to do this at this point, where we ascribe emotion, we ascribe intent. We do this with animals. We do it with objects. We do it with cars. Like we do it with all kinds of shit. We do this because we presume our modality of existence in everything. Instead, what I'm saying, and I think Sunday too, is far more radical. It's to understand that everyone's modality of existence is different, and we should not be presuming or placing ourselves in them. I did a Spinoza reading earlier today, really hard for me not to pull out of that. The nature of how we find ourselves at the place of resentment or losing power is when specifically we define the world through others, rather than understanding it through ourselves. And that difference, that interaction puts us in a place of losing our own personal power as we exist. This is through Nietzsche, Bergson, Deleuze, all the way through. The way we define things is through our existence and our modality, but we do not have access to the modality of others, let alone other species or existences. This is not saying that others are less than us because they can't feel sadness and I pity them. This isn't saying that the blind can't see, therefore I'm better. This is saying their modality of existence, every modality of existence, has this odd interaction in this way of being that is worth taking on its merits and allowing them that. And that allows, again, the ability for that multiplicity, rather than me presuming the reason you're saying or doing a thing is my reason. You don't have my modality, and I don't want you to. The differences between us that allow this conversation to exist, that allow these things to be, that allows me to come on and shit on Sunday. And I gave him $5 to do it earlier, for God's sakes. I shit on him for $5.
And frankly, I should have demanded more, but
hey, it was a good super chat. I don't care. The modalities are free. Sunday doesn't have the reasons for doing things that I do, that you do, that a dog does, that a bird does, that a plant does. Assigning those modalities and intent in a way that is more than just, boy, that looks like a war. Fine. Well, they're going to war different. And this modality gets lost in it as we flatten things. This is my general argument. Sorry.
I don't see how that argument ultimately addresses my contentions.
Okay.
Because first off, it doesn't... My argument permits yours to still exist, so you can just say, like, I don't know.
I mean, it does address directly, but I'm happy to go through it.
Go through it a little bit quicker then, because I'm a little lost specifically.
Give a contention, we'll take it point by point, and we'll just have a discussion around it.
Okay, it's fine to describe things as going to war if it looks like they're going to war.
Okay. Sure. I don't think ethically that there's something wrong with just saying, boy, that looks like war. Ha.
Well, hang on. Can I push back on that briefly?
Sure.
How do you then distinguish between something which looks like a war and something which is a war, or is war always just an appearance?
Well, I mean, literally, based on his definition, when you were talking about your modalities, I guess if I think it's a war, then it has to be a war, and you can't ascribe your modality onto me. So if I think it's a war, then it's probably a war.
Well, it has a likeness to a war to you, but when you're
so what other valuable stimuli could there be? I mean, underneath that,
it's not a matter of what value, but like when you explain a thing, like when you say, "I think this looks like a war," you're not just repeating to yourself like this impression that you got from viewing this thing based on your experience of what other things that you call wars look like. You're trying to explain to somebody else. I think the thing these animals are doing is a war. Now, if the only thing that determines that is just if the only thing you're saying by that is this looks like a war, I don't know why you wouldn't simply say no, this looks kind of like a war, in which case, yeah, sure. But that's a far cry from saying this is like a soccer game kind of looks like a war. Right.
And people literally will say, announcers will literally say, like, it's a war out there. I don't think anyone is under the impression when you say that literally, I don't know, the girls' soccer team from Seton High is actually going to start, wearing the faces of their enemies on their fucking soccer balls.
Wholly agree. And I think the problem there is kind of what Sunday's getting at, and it ends up being that,
why not call it a game?
No. You can. The thing is, those aren't. They don't exclude each other. It both can be true. Like literally, we were using the idea of a battle before.
Any word can be true.
Something being a battle does not literally, by definition of what a battle is, exclude it from being a part of a war. And a war has battle. We're talking about squares and rectangles and getting very, very like tied up in the necessity of understanding that squares can exist, while we're actually trying to have a conversation between differentials.
And you're doing your best to describe what's happening. And I will say, when, again, there's specifics around all of this, in the moment of the game, when everyone, and I've been to a handful of really fucking rough goddamn games in Europe, yeah, the word war actually really does work kind of more often than not in the moment. Now, afterwards, I don't think I would like look back and say, now, those games, those were wars. It's not the same thing in the heat of it when people are yelling. I totally agree with that. But again, now we're talking about in the heat of it or the confusion or the I think, and without the qualifiers of those things or without being part of it, there's a second layer, and that is the poetic. But this is where we get into the problem, because the poetic allows interpretation. And because the nature of words, especially given how they came from laws and are basically part of the despot's way of controlling us. And so our job is to basically try to figure out what is being said all the time under threat of death. It puts us in a really fucked up place where we need to figure out what is meant. We have an onus on us to figure out, what do you mean when you say war? And now I'm putting myself on you and you're putting yourself on the situation. And we're removed from the whole thing to the point where we get someone like Jordan Peterson who says shit like lobsters fucking whatever, and an insane concept bullshit that he's got, but it lets us like lose some of the beauty of it. But you can, one of my favorite lines I could say then in response is, instead of, I could look at a war, right? And I could just as easily say, well, this looks like a peaceful field.
True, but I mean, if we're going to get into poetry and we're going to talk definitions, we can refer to the bard and say, "What is a rose? Would a rose by any other name smell as sweet?" Well, kind of get into that. So the definitionality of things.
My point.
The definitionality is ascribed, and it's only so good as it's useful. The thing is if we've noted a bunch of times where we can use it descriptively and we've found it to be useful, but it's just for some reason there's a bugbear that's highly specific to the conversation that only you guys seem highly, highly dedicated to, but it doesn't seem to be a commonality.
Well,
I can refer to the dictionary is fine with me. A few people have read that.
I'm going to refer back to the Bard as well. I think you're making an assumption that Shakespeare was himself making the positive statement that a rose by any other name would be just as sweet. But I would put it to you that if you were walking down a street in summer and you smelled the lovely waft of a donut shop and then realized actually that was roadkill as you passed by, it would cease to smell as sweet to you very, very quickly. Because it's, once again, like it's more complicated than just the raw visceral data of a moment. When we're talking about war, we're talking about a complicated set of things that involves not just atoms in a particular behavior that looks a certain kind of way from the air. We're talking about a complex social situation in which there are hostilities between abstractions that are only abstractions because they're abstracted away from communities of
you're misunderstanding
conditions.
We're going to go, but you're misunderstanding what that quote means. It just means that a rose is a rose, no matter what you call it.
Juliet, I know what it means. It doesn't mean that.
It doesn't mean that, actually.
Doesn't it?
It's
that's what Romeo's saying, but that's not what it means, though. The reason why it's
actually not what Romeo's saying either. The specific line is what is in a name, because it's a comment about how the name is meaningless, that the object is the thing. So when we're talking the name, If a rose were called shitthorn,
Fuck
maybe it
yeah.
wouldn't be as popular. Like, so the name, yeah, it's what is in a name. A rose by the other name would smell sweet. The point is that the name is not intrinsic to the item. That's the point of the Shakespearean quote, that the name is almost not the thing, that's the point. And so it's why he's saying Montague.
It's actually Juliet that says that.
Name.
It's not Romeo. Sorry.
Well, it's about their last names. The whole point is that the fucking names our names don't matter. Who we are matters, blah, blah, blah. Names are irrelevant. So it's less saying that we can replace the name with anything else. It's more that the thing underneath is the element that what we call the call of words is just wordplay, ultimately at best. And as to your point earlier, our ability to define and speak to things. When we say those chimps are going to war, for example, bonobos going to war. Sorry, Sunday. We'll go with your fashion brand of the week, I guess. The bonobos are going to war. The
bonobos are apparently very peaceful. I'm reading
button-up
about
shirts
right now.
against fucking khakis.
When they're going, if you say those bonobos are going to war, you're describing something that is very not necessarily violent.
Yeah, well, that's a much better fashion joke for like the 6 people who've ever seen the brand. That's okay. The point is, your job when you're communicating effectively is to tell people what's happening. So when you use the word war to describe it, you're not describing the right thing. You're describing a thing that you're seeing, but it's not at all the right word. It would be an incredibly wrong one because they don't have war. It'd be like saying, oh, look, in the heat of the moment at a soccer game, sure. Afterwards saying, you won't believe it. I was at the Broncos and Cowboys game. It was a fucking war.
I mean,
war.
Terrible example because literally people will say that. I grew up in a football town. Like literally, you would hear
I grew up in Denver.
I mean, you'll get back and say it was a slaughter. You know what I mean? Which is basically every fucking Bengals game in the mid 2000s.
Kind of that speaking to the emotional intensity of the thing, but everyone's aware it's not speaking to the war, right?
Yes. So in that case, wouldn't
when you
with
say it
with
about
the monkeys, it's the same thing though, right?
But by the way, new article from this April: peaceful bonobos may actually be more aggressive than chimps.
Do monkeys wage war? The answer: you will go online, you will see many people who say this. So they say affirmatively. So you're actually answering the thing with a description by saying and affirming of another thing. You know, maybe not intentionally, but you're not talking about the intensity of the thing. Where none of us have been next to chimps as they're fighting and killing each other.
Thank fucking God, right?
Yeah, no shit. They're fucking mean little fuckers.
I do YouTube.
Technically, we just watched 3 of you do it. So the setup that's sort of behind all of it, the question would be, is it the best word to use? Is it a word? Sure. And I'm not really ever shitting on people for the words they use because there's always better and I'm not necessarily right or whatever. But to say things that have such loaded realities in them that are part of those other realities, maybe the monkeys doing that isn't right, but the pedantry matters because these other things do matter as we start talking about, for example, free speech. Ready? Social justice, critical race theory. Let's start naming a bunch of stuff that has a fuck ton of emotionally loaded realities under it and just say, look, I'm just describing the thing I'm seeing, which doesn't land at all when I say that because you're like, I don't see color. Like saying something like that, like,
we're kind of traveling away from the topic.
No, it's the same thing. Same thing. Because it's about the words.
I don't think so because we're talking about phraseology at this point instead of, and specifically we're talking about sloganeering, whether as opposed to describing like literally our impression of an action that's happening. You know what I'm saying? Which is kind of like where you've got
of an action that's happening. It's your impression of a large social situation between multiple animals.
Which is still just an action that's happening. I mean, we can expand something. You know what I mean? It's like saying like, hey, I saw a car driving down the street. You're like, hold on now. I think what you saw was a mobile carriage operated by a V8 internal combustion engine, and then all this blah blah blah. And of course, we're getting into an argument that's basically accuracy versus precision.
Tyler, you're making a big mistake here. So
I don't think so.
Yes, it is I know, but it is a kind of an action, but it's actually kind of matters what kind of action it is, because remember, the thing that's being pointed to is not that these institutions that we have are necessary because bonobos or but actually the New Scientist article, bonobos, because bonobos punch each other in the wild. The argument is these institutions are necessary because war is ingrained in us evolutionarily speaking. But that's a problem if what the state is doing is not actually the same kind of action that the bonobos are doing, right? So if you're justifying the existence of an institution now by reference to what is sort of ingrained in us biologically, and you're referring to other species to make that claim, well, that's a bit of a problem if they're not actually doing the same thing. If there's like different underworkings, there's a different significance to it.
Yeah, I'm not making any of those points. I never suggested that monkeys or any sort of primates, any animal going to war justifies human.
No, but that's why it's not pedantic though. It actually gets to the heart of it. That's really important. Like it's central. I'm arguing with Connor, not with you, but like.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah. That's why
you're arguing with Connor. But that's not a point I made.
The language we use matters for that same reason. If I talk about and I make a comment that someone's an alpha, for example,
don't try to appeal to me.
Just very quickly before you continue, Brooks. No, but the point you made was a building block of Connor's point. You agreed with him on, which is that these animals, quote unquote, go to war. But whether or not they go to war, let me explain going to war is at the heart of it.
Let me actually explain that because I think those were some of the comments that because I disagree with aspects of what he said too. And I try to correct on him, but that's like.
Well, I'm not saying you agree to his conclusions. But what I'm saying is that there was a sub argument that was critical to his argument. That you agreed with him on.
We're gonna
but my clarification was still like not completely there. So
I'd love to hear real quick.
Okay.
As far as an actual conflict, I believe is absolutely just an inevitable aspect of things. Conflict does not have to mean war, and as a matter of fact, it's better when it does not. Ultimately. War is a method of conflict resolution, wherein the resolution is obviously the probably worst possible one. My point is, yes, conflict is inevitable in almost all circumstances. Conflict not being violent conflict. Conflict being sometimes just you have to have an argument with somebody, or you have to, compromise with someone, which is still an act of conflict resolution. That's the point I would make. His saying that, even monkeys, whatever the fuck, go to war. I don't even know if that's necessarily literally true. It's just a fair point to actually make to say like, hey, this is a thing that can occur. We would have to get it goddamn head ass deep in fucking animal science, but literally you can observe large contingencies of different animals resolving conflicts that are similar to human conflicts by just killing the shit out of each other, which is
okay.
Even if it happens, it's bad. All right, we are better than that.
Sure, it's bad. You're sure it's bad, but animals have like an actual mechanism for making it so that doesn't happen to them, which is they live in large family groups and they punch the other apes. When we're talking about what a state does, we're talking about something that has its own abstracted, forward-thinking goals and designs for which it stakes out claims in the abstract for building upon and expanding upon and farming upon and things like that, and maybe for doing other activities that are sort of less obviously necessary to its survival, like for example purging it of this religion or this ethnicity or things like that. They're different activities, and to secure in that way is different from the kind of security that's being invoked when you're talking about what stops a family of apes from being massacred by another family of apes. It's an entirely different thing. Like the state itself is like it doesn't just.
I mean, if the argument you're making is just that the state is considerably more complex, yeah.
No, not more complex, like different radically in kind. Like it exists on a different plane.
How? In what way? Like it just seems like the plane is still complexity. You know what I mean?
In this way, bonobos don't secure the border, right?
But like they do.
No,
with their own little version of what they do.
No, they don't. What they do is they will walk around and quote unquote patrol an area and will interact with certain things that intrude on that area in a particular way, but they don't, for example, hoard and transport weapons and build walls to secure.
Let me try.
It's an extrapolation of scale.
It's
you know,
wrong extrapolation. It's
why? Why is it wrong? If you're literally, it sounds like you have to keep using the same words.
Apparatus behind the one that isn't present in the other.
You're definitely talking past each other right now. I'm gonna try to split this because I'm agreeing with Sunday. I think there's slightly different wording. Bonobos, monkeys, and monkeys. I'm just gonna say monkeys. God damn it, I can't say bonobos without thinking of the fucking clothing line. Monkeys. Do you believe, beginning of the day, the monkey gets up and goes, "Today I will be going around our border," in some capacity, in some monkey brain thought process?
Probably, yeah. What else do they do?
We know they
get
don't.
Up and
we know they don't.
So
the way that how it works instead, and this is the difference. How it works instead is that they are pretty much intimately connected to the things directly in front of them, with a handful of sort of emotional behavioral constructs that have been built over time. So they're reactive deeply to the world that they're in. They're not planning. They're reactive. It's a part of nature. Bonobos and chimps, higher primates, a handful of others have shown a little bit ability to further plan or be more abstract, but generally speaking, they're reacting. So how their border works, and you can see there's the amazing video on the chimp wars, as you might call them.
Okay, but we can sit, but it's still
real quick. I'm finishing. The monkeys go about their day, and they all do different things that are sort of reacting to the environment around them. And as they go around, the after image of what is done, we see as them walking a border. They walk and react to the sense, and they turn because of the sensor sounds. They turn because of distance. They aren't aware of a border as a concept. It's not how they work. Dogs don't understand yards. They understand smells. They understand how to react to that. The after image of a dog walking around is that they piss on fire hydrants. They don't know what a fire hydrant is. The after image is what we give it. It is the after image of the thing that we then give voice and presume the entire process leading up to and cognizant of. And this is one of those great behavioral tricks psychology plays on us, is the afterword. It's a thing that's been around for 150 years. You can go back to like right before Freud. You can go back to fucking Spinoza in the 1700s and before. The idea of the afterword, where the thing that we see the image as actually didn't have the plans up to, but we add that to it. We give that history.
Yeah, so none of this goes again, like literally, just right back to where I started it. You're just describing the problems and solutions. It's just at a different level. They have an issue. They have a border. They don't understand the border the same way that we do. But the reason that they even have those things is for the same reasons that we do. We have just evolved to such a fucking insane state that our borders have to be hyper complex. But even our types of diplomacy are hyper complex. Yeah, there's people that wake up and go and patrol our literal borders on foot. But there's other people that get up and look at computers and like observe them and stuff. And there's other people that get up and do surveys and make sure that they're there. And then there's other people that get up and they go across the border and talk to people on the other side and say like, hey, are we still cool with this fucking border? Are we going to have to kill each other? No? Okay, fine. Trade? Yes.
When you say it's more complex, what do you mean?
All of the complexities I literally just stated, Sunday.
No. But when you say it is more complex, what does it mean to be at a higher degree of complexity from a lower degree of complexity? So what is more versus less complex?
Okay. Literally. So with these hypothetical primates, they look at border. Okay, it's there. All right. And they're like, all right, fine. We do a few little tiny things. People it's difficult for them to encourage whatever. With human beings, there are just all of the symptoms, or the systems, establishing the border, drawing it on a map, interacting with other subcultures within humanity and saying like, hey, that's there.
So,
hey,
so
this
if I may, so by complexity, you simply mean
complexity.
Fewer parts.
Complexity is more parts.
More parts.
Well, more parts and an overall larger system. Complexity has the word complexity. I mean, it can be an
No, no, I
increase
understand,
an
but
increase
I'm
of
asking
minorities
for a
within a
reason, though.
majority, and an increase of the majority itself, and a subsequent increase of the minorities within the majority. It's complexity. It's
I didn't follow that,
deflationary
but like
diction.
more parts as opposed to fewer parts, right?
I mean, it literally. So
Okay,
complexity
so
can be
it's yes or no, yes or no. More parts and fewer parts. More parts, more complex. Fewer parts, less complex. Right? Simple.
it can be more
I
parts. It
disagree
can be
with this
more.
line, Sunday.
It could be more parts, and it could be more parts that have
Why do you disagree,
more
Brooks?
intricate interactions with each other. It's the definition.
Because the complexity isn't really the thing. The issue is that the monkeys and the animals don't have an understanding of the arrangement.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. Is like, do you think that cognition is simply more complex other matter? Or is it a difference in kind? Is there a different kind of process taking place here?
Sort of, yes. How I would ask is more, when a person is born, and will they eventually walk the borders? What are those borders? What they learn those borders are is a series of massively complex, sort of abstract concepts of nationality, race, location, poverty, materiality, international politics, and all that. Borders determined by historical determination and all those things. A monkey walks where it doesn't stink or does stink in certain ways. There's a difference in how that border operates or works. This is true of, by the way, tribes. There's a reason that, old tribes, they didn't really have a territoriality that sort of had borders. It's not really how tribes operated. They didn't have borders in that sense. That's why monkeys don't also have borders. They don't sit and have like, oh, this is the border of our camp. There's a distance thing interplaying with where their hunt grounds are, the size of the group, how much noise they're making, how much they can control. There's a lot of sort of complexities that make it a lot more fluid than a border. It's why it's not really a border. It's more the edges of what they're able to control at any given moment. It's a different beast than a border by a wide margin.
I don't think so. A border is a border. A border is a separation line between two areas, and that's sufficient.
It's not a line. That's my point.
But it doesn't have to necessarily be a line. It's a delineation. I mean, if we want to get hyper pedantic about this,
The word line is in delineation for a reason, Tyler, just so you know.
I know.
I mean, it is actually part of it.
So, like literally. But yeah, the line doesn't have to be what I mean by a literal fucking drawn line. It can be very broad and gray. You know what I mean? It could be very, very wide. This is a gray area. Still a line, depending on your relativity. If you look at it from space, it'll be like paper thin. If you sit on the ground, it's 800 miles wide.
No monkey has that.
Okay.
I mean, they don't. They walk where they smell and they turn where they don't. And literally 20 seconds later, a different monkey may move completely differently.
You know what happens? All those little areas where they smell, right? If you connect those dots, you make a line.
But if you connect those dots, Tyler, they don't connect those dots.
They do. That's why they walk from dot to dot, Sunday.
No, they don't walk from
they
dot
do.
to dot.
He said it. You go until you hit a spot, you walk away. This is how we do atomic imaging.
But they don't see dots, Tyler. It's like,
no, they smell the spot. They sense a binary in the airs as he's describing
Tyler,
it. There's a binary. There is.
Tyler,
Sunday, no, stop. Literally stop right now, because this is absolutely absurd. He has described a binary. A binary
that's
where
not
there's
what I did.
you did. You said they go where there's smells and there's where there's not smells. That literally describes an area where there is and there isn't. If you put those areas next to each other, what appears between the areas? What appears between the areas? I'm so upset.
Multitude of things.
Every single example you've talked about relative to a border has re-described a border, and then you said, hold on, you don't understand. Let me do something pedantic, talk for 5 minutes, and then we still don't arrive at the same thing.
No, Tyler, stop with the debate bro shit. You actually made a really dumb mistake just now.
What?
You think that smell works visually. There's no spots with smell, Tyler. There are zones of intensity that differ from each other.
Yes. What happens at the end of the zone? You stop moving.
Another zone starts. It's continuous. There's smells. They don't have like a discrete spot. That's not how smell works.
They do. That's why they piss at the edge of their territory, creating a border.
They kind of
they piss because piss can be smelled at distance. It gets stronger, so you go away before you hit the fire hydrant.
Which is what I was talking about before. When we were talking about drawing a lines and the lines are wide, remember that? That's so that you don't cross the line.
I want us all to be friends here, so we're going to call it here. Tyler, it's been fun.
I think it's been fun.
I'm having a good time.
Brooks.
I'm having a good time.
You. Okay.
This is not debate bro stuff, though. I mean...
No, I don't think it's debate bro. I'm trying to explain. I think it's a it's the reason it's kind of difficult, Tyler, just to say, and then we can close out because I know Sunday is just about to fucking die.
I am not mad at anybody, by the way. This is still peace on earth.
I am at all of you.
No. Sunday's furious with me, and I fucking earned it. It's great.
Yes, you did.
But hey, he earned it too. The challenge is we're trying to talk through what is a very difficult concept, which is the nature of the territorialization of words and the nature of how definitions and speaking works when we talk and how such signs basically build our worldview. This is not easy shit. Like if this was easy shit, a fucking 20-page book at Barnes & Noble would be all we'd need to understand it. There's a reason people dedicate their lives to even an aspect of this. And I don't even come close to grasping it. So we're talking about very complex shit. We're trying to talk about in very simplified, basic ways that aren't really in that headspace. So we're gonna talk past each other. It's expected. At least I expect it. So I think we're all doing it in good faith though, and that's why I've had a good time.
I'm in good faith. I think we just hit one of those. We hit one of those little static
slurs.
Moderators, subject all fans of Tyler in my chat to a fate beyond mortal comprehension.
Hey! My moderators tuck all the squids in and give them hot chocolate and tell them that they were okay today.
Because they know who rules them. They fear them. That's not love. All right.
Abolish all borders.
Not kin.
Can we say abolish all borders? Can we actually say that at the end, though? I do stand for that.
What?
Abolish all borders.
Abolish all borders. Can we
free travel, free trade.
Stop the dogs from pissing. They must all I'm sending you all to Kid Not Kin. Go subscribe to Tyler. He's not always this bad, I promise.
You can also come over here. I'm still alive.
Oh, are you? Okay, well, are you streaming for longer? I thought you were done, but you've been going for like 9 hours, no?
It's marathon, boy. I'm doing it. I'm trying to die.
Doing marathon too? Is that like the new trend?
Well, my wife is out of town and I don't have anything to do, and I have trouble sleeping if she's not around, so I'm going to exhaust myself.
You need to learn to lie better. You need to go, look, I'm destitute and I'm about to lose my house, and the SWAT teams came in and I need a lot of money to move to another country.
No, all the arguments, I could never. I would sooner die. Oh my god. But thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm so sorry it got too heated. And I still love you. If you want to,
did it really get heated Sunday?
No, this is mild.
Okay, good. Well, we can talk about let's talk about something a little less contentious next time. Like, I don't know, fucking Israel Palestine. I'll just say I agree with you and walk away. You can just go, hey, by the way, can I say why I did score today?
What did you score today?
I did a little Brianna Wu dunk. I got that in.
Oh yeah, what'd you do?
You were there for it. You missed it?
That's how deep you were
with Connor. Yeah. Yeah, I guess you did. Yeah, but Connor, it didn't.
That was the most animated I got him all night. Connor, I know you're still watching. Thanks, I love you.
Don't talk that way about my wife. Okay.
He stopped watching when I tuned in. He gave me shit about PTSD on Twitter. He doesn't want to talk to me.
Oh God! All right. Well, hey, I'll see you guys later. Take it easy. Any Sunday people, if you want to pop over and argue,
are you continuing? Okay, I'll send you all the. You're doing a bother. I'm going to send you there immediately. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
See you guys. Bye. Love you.
Yeah. Love you too.